the kitchen of intrigue, Curt Jackson and Chris Callell are cooking up a batch of mystery soup.
Each episode serves a new blend of tips, tactics, trends, and tales from the business and design sides of the escape room world.
So grab your spoon, because this episode starts in 3, 2, 1.
Mystery Soup.
All right, welcome back to Mystery Soup, the podcast where we delve into the business and design side of escape room industry. I'm Curt, here with Chris, as always. How's it going, Chris?
Good. And we're talking to people today from my home state, so I'm excited.
That's right. We'll get into that in a minute. So let's just introduce Chris and Anne Lukeman from CU Adventures. That's who we have on the show today. How are you doing, you two?
We're doing great.
Doing great. Thanks so much for having us.
Awesome. Hey, you got the professional setup. They actually have mics and headphones and everything, Chris. That's awesome.
Curt, I don't know if you got the entire, it's CU Space and Time Continuum Adventures in
You're right.
Norway. It's like a crazy long name. That's all I
It's inconvenient for business reasons to have your official business name be Champaign-Urbana Adventures in Time and Space, LLC.
There we go.
I love it.
It cuts off on our tax returns.
That's right.
So we've had other people on the show that we've interviewed, and a lot of them are places that I went or I have been to, and Chris has not. And so Chris is very excited because we went together to visit CU Adventures, and we played three of their games, Chris?
I've been there before too, so I think I have 3 of their games total. So I think we did 2 together and we both did 1 at other
separately.
times.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, loved it. So what we want to do right now is first give you the opportunity to introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about yourselves outside of the escape room.
Is there life outside the escape room?
Right.
We are Chris and Anne Lukeman. We are married, and we have been owning and operating CU Adventures for the past 9 years.
Yeah, we opened in October of 2015. We had definitely at one point built more escape rooms than we played, because right when it started, it was real early when it started, and there weren't a lot here in the Midwest.
Wow. Awesome.
But yeah, we played our first games back in early 2015, maybe late 2014, and we just absolutely were hooked. Our background is in independent filmmaking, and so the idea of being able to build fun sets and tell narrative stories in this way was super attractive to us for a lot of reasons, but also independent film. Nobody wants to watch your movies.
Yeah, it's the downer sometimes. So for a longest time, we met at the University of Illinois here in Champaign-Urbana doing a feature film that I directed my senior year called The University of Illinois versus a Mummy. And it's goofy B-horror schlock. And after that, we kept on making short films. We did a lot of Comic-Con circuits.
We got into the web series kind of crowd.
Yeah, and this was like 2005 to 2010 or so. And the real big downer for independent film is you'll sometimes submit to festivals and there'll be more presenting filmmakers there in the audience than like audience members for a free film showing. And we were always really into the schlocky production design. I built some like large robot puppets for our web series before we switched creative gears. And it just blew our minds that there was this artistic medium in escape rooms where not only are they popular, but people are actually coming to pay.
Yeah, it was absolutely bonkers that people would not only want to enjoy our stories, but in fact pay to enjoy our stories. That was a total crazy.
That's the vibe we come from. We not look at ourselves as high art by any means, but we enjoy telling stories. We enjoy showing people goofy things that they would not otherwise experience. And we like spending our time building and creating those things that maybe no one has seen before.
I would assume that for like the independent films, you had to have a fairly large crew.
It's been all over the place. As few as 2+ actors and as large as 30 or 40, I think is where I've topped out.
So we really came into our own during the digital revolution. First, when the DVX, and I'm just saying camera models now, but basically when HD first started becoming accessible, and then DSLRs became possible to do video with. That was really when we were at our height of it, when you could actually start to make movies that look like movies and not like TV shows. And that was a really exciting time, except now everything looks awesome because it's very much more accessible to make all of your stuff look awesome.
Yeah, which is great for digital storytelling, but it leaves our true skill set that we came from in the past.
Yeah.
But we jumped out of that before that even started really happening too much.
I feel like it's much easier to, as far as getting everybody together to design and build an escape room. It doesn't take cameramen and somebody to hold the mic and all these actors and everything else.
Actually, one of the most exciting things when we opened the escape room was that we were finally able to pay our actors and our people who worked with us on the sets. Like, we had money and budget, so we could actually pay these people who we've been working with for a long time to do really cool work. That was awesome.
I love that.
But you're right. Yeah, you don't have to do it all in one night with your actors and everybody on site, and you can't get rained out for an escape room at the time.
Yeah, it's definitely a different dance to coordinate. And it was something that we could do. We've had some larger build teams at times for our escape room, but mostly we build with a pretty small team of 2 or 3 people. And it takes a lot longer than one night on a film set, but it's a lot more rewarding, I think, in a lot of ways.
Now, so my first escape room was in 2021. And so I heard about you. I'm like, oh, everyone's telling me you got to go to see you. You got to go there. And if I remember right, you guys were still shut down for 2020. Was that the...
We took a long time getting back to normal after COVID. We were pretty conservative in not wanting to have any of our staff get sick and not wanting us to get sick. We had a lot of folks on staff who had family members that were extra susceptible to autoimmune diseases, stuff like that, or people who themselves had autoimmune problems. We were really cautious. We opened when we could, but we didn't reopen game night for quite a while because that's the one where there's a live actor in the room. And when you're on the other side in the escape room, when you're the one watching all the cameras, you see all the gross stuff people do. You wouldn't want to be open either. I tell you what.
Yeah, even before the pandemic, I don't want to... Minor content warning. Even before the pandemic, we'd have somebody just blow their nose out into their hands and just wipe it on stuff. And it's one thing intellectually knowing that happens at Disneyland and things like that. It's another thing if you're watching it happen on camera.
And then 40 minutes later, you have to go into that room and touch those things to reset the game.
That's not a pandemic story, by the way. That's a general people
right.
Yeah, so we were pretty slow. For a long time, we did extended resets, basically, where we let the game air out for a half hour after people were out of it before our game masters went into reset. And so that kind of limited the number of games we could have. We're back to normal now. Still, of course, have masks on site if anybody's feeling sick or if anybody is worried about it.
We weren't really the first to close, but we definitely were not ever the first to reopen when because Illinois zigzagged a few times because it also closed for winter of...
Christmas of 2020.
2021, 2020 to 2021.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Yeah, you should have been down here in Florida because we were open 2 weeks after. And
oh boy.
But you were able to keep your staff working because of your shirts and online games.
Yeah. We were very lucky to get a lot of government support. Illinois did a really good job making sure that there were a lot of programs available so that we could keep people employed and keep paying our rent. And that was so awesome. But yeah, the pandemic was almost a weird silver lining for us because we immediately pivoted to these at-home games. And we had people who had home recording setups that were great, so they could help us do audio and sound effects and stuff from home. We had people who were able to do Photoshop from home and help support with that. Chris was on the computer pretty much the day after we shut down. I was catatonic on the couch, just so depressed. And he was designing The Lost Temple, our digital game.
Nice.
Yeah, we released 2 digital games, and then largely because the writing was on the wall that we were going to close for that Christmas, we did our first Solve Our shirt on Christmas of 2020 as a kind of tactically built as the perfect at-home gift for escape room fans. And between those two projects, they really put us on the map.
Yeah, I actually sell quite a few Solver shirts to the UK and other parts of Europe. I mail as many to those as I do around the US. It's crazy. We have people who will buy our stuff from all over the world.
Yeah, there's
That's
a few
awesome.
reviewers that have been really nice to us in the UK, and their audience is willing to pay for the shipping.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, so Curt and I have been, so we know it, but can you tell our listeners a little bit like what games do you have and or just what's all available there at CU?
Yeah, we opened our current building in 2018. So we started the business in 2015 and really expanded in a weird, uneven way. And then we had a little bit of a reality check. Hey, we need to up our game. We need to all be in one rented space instead of a few downtown places that are near each other but not connected to each other. So we basically closed down all of our games and opened our current building, which is in a huge industrial building.
Mm-hmm.
And there we have currently 6 escape rooms, 6.5 escape rooms, depending on how you count them. And they kind of range in a lot of themes.
Yeah, when we opened at that building in 2018, pretty quick after that, we had Revenge of the Cabin, which is our spooky haunted cabin game. We are, as former independent filmmakers, we're huge fans of schlocky horror, especially like Evil Dead. So this is our homage to that kind of world. The Wizard's Curse, which is a fantasy game that's really good for smaller groups. We have a lot of requests for 2-player groups, so we wanted to build a game that really worked well for 2.
Nice.
And Calling All Villains, which is our big game. It's a
Love it.
superhero themed game. It's huge and it plays up to 10 and can even fit more.
Features 2/3 of a Volkswagen bus.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Nice.
in the time since then, we have opened a Christmas game and we did Game Night, which is the game that's probably won the most awards of anything. We built that actually as a portable game that we would take to Gen Con, which is the big gaming convention in Indianapolis. It is extremely tabletop role-playing game themed. You start in your friend's basement where you're there to play your weekly session, and then you get sucked into the game. And then our most recent game that we just opened at the beginning of last year is Rise of the Icarus, which is our Starship game that we have been working on forever and ever. We're so proud of it. It's has more tech in it than the rest of the building combined.
It's basically been our pandemic project. On top of that, we have another game space that hosted a Dracula, a pop-up that we had for a few months at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and recently was part of we used that space as part of a collaboration with the University of Illinois Theater Department, which did a show called I Wish that just closed, but we might be reopening it for a little bit. That was a 90-minute game that had 6 actors in it at a time.
Oh, wow.
Wow. And are you guys D&D players?
We are. We don't get to play as much as we'd like, but
Yeah, ostensibly we are, but working at the escape room on weekends and many nights has made it a little
Right.
bit challenging to get on a regular table and not feel bad about it.
Yeah, we do have a weekly group for playing first Frosthaven and then Gloomhaven.
Gloomhaven, then Frosthaven.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I said that backwards. Yeah. First Gloomhaven, then Frosthaven, which is almost a substitute D&D that it takes a lot less time.
Have you played Evil Dead 2 at Hourglass in Seattle?
Not in person, but we played it online during the pandemic.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there were
that was
some
fun.
great gags in there. I really liked it.
Right. Having that downtown location, because that's more of a retail area. Did you see, I'm always curious about this because we're looking for space right now for escape room. And that location versus where you're at now, which is not on a main road or anything like that. Would you suggest somebody look for a space that kind of meets their needs versus a retail, people's eyes are on it type space?
When you're in an escape room, people are booking online, especially if they know that they want to come play at your spot. So it doesn't really matter where they are, they'll pay and then they come to you. And so having a space that works really well to make the games that you want to make, I think is more important than having a really visually appealing area. Honestly, we don't really particularly like getting walk-ins because we're usually not able to accommodate them. We probably don't have staff on site all the time to accommodate everybody. Yeah. We also, in our original location, shared a bathroom with a bar.
So we're a little jaded.
Yeah.
And then as late Saturday nights would happen, we would get people walking through, and our GMs, our poor GMs, and us at that time were at the front desk trying to run a game, and then someone will wander in and be like, so tell me about your escape room. And I'm like, no, you're obviously not interested. You're just bored. I need to focus on my customers.
Grab a flyer,
Yeah.
go back to the bar.
Chris, you played Calling All Villains, right? That's the
I
one
did.
we
So
didn't.
there's something in that one of the rooms that involves the ceiling that I think she was 6 or 7 at that time. She was done with escape rooms because of that. Like it was so fun. And we had to, we did so bad in that part too. Like we were there forever. And so you're going to be fine. But she was like, nope. She just sat the rest of the time. And now when we even go, which is, she'll be fine. She'll grow out of it. But it was a favorite room. I love that room.
That age is like my big asterisk for Calling All Villains, because it's superhero themed.
It's really popular for like 10 to 12-year-old birthday parties. And even kids as young as 8 really love it. But 7 and under is always a crapshoot with what kids are going to decide is scary.
Yeah.
You can never really predict it. Yeah.
Well, and she's my little villain. I figured she would be all like, we're going to celebrate. Let's help the villains.
When we went, Chris had already done that. Chris and his wife had already done that room. And Tina and I, we wanted to play it, but they had already played it. So we ended up playing Icarus and Game Night. And I love, Chris, you liked Icarus more than Game Night. I loved Game Night.
Just because I'm not a D&D. I'm not a big D&D person. I think that
neither
really
am I,
Game Night. But Icarus was it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
I could just sit in there and look at it.
It photographs the best out of all of our rooms too.
For sure.
All that neon lighting is just clutch.
Well, I did. After doing CU, didn't I take you up to Wizard Quest and House? Was that around that same time? I feel like.
Yep. We went to Wizard Quest and House on the Rock. And we know you two are fans of that.
Our love for Wizard Quest and House on the Rock is very well documented.
Yeah, we're big fans. The original Wizard Quest was one of the things that kind of planted the seed for wanting to run an escape room before escape rooms existed anywhere.
We went in maybe 2011, 2012. It was really before escape rooms were a thing, but it was when we were in the middle of figuring out what we wanted to do instead of film. And seeing that set and being able to interact with it. It was raining. We were in the Dells. We were like, oh, this thing looks hilarious. Let's go play this little stupid kids game. Then we went in. It was hard. It was built for adults. Kids were having a great time too. But the challenge level was, and the respect that it gave to the player was built for adults. And I had never seen anything like that before. I had never had a game I could play that was a commercial endeavor that was for me.
The first time Carrie and I did it, we did it twice because we wanted to go back and find all the secret passages. They just had so many secret passages. Like we didn't even really play the second time. Screw the challenges. We just want to see everything. It's just
when we went, Chris was like, you have to go to House on the Rock.
Oh yeah.
But his explanation for it was horrible. Because how do you explain that place?
It's better not to explain. It's better just to go and see it because it can't be explained. It is, I think, a very cool, early, immersive artwork. And some people look at it like that. Some people, my parents, will go and they'll look at it and they'll say, that's some really cool stuff. That's a really cool collection of stuff.
Some people will go and be like, that was a fine museum.
But yeah, I think if you're really
organized order,
if you're really interested in the story that they're clearly trying to tell, everybody has their own moment when you realize that, okay, maybe some of this stuff is real, but most of this stuff is just totally fake.
Sure.
And everybody's moment is different. It depends what you know a lot about. For me, it was when they showed the crown jewels. Pretty sure those are not in Wisconsin. And then you look around and you're like, oh, everything is meaningless.
Yeah, it's great to think about in the view frame of Meow Wolf. Because Meow Wolf didn't exist back then. And there was nothing else like it that I can think of that was as bombastic, as big, as much of a exploratory walkthrough. There are weird roadside attractions here and there, but it would mostly be trying to scam you into a tent to look at one thing.
Yeah, there's nothing at this level where it's worth the money, right?
Yeah, where it's just overwhelming your senses.
Hey, but you get ice cream midway through.
Every good attraction should give you ice cream.
After you get to that midway point, you're starving because
It's the best
crazy.
placed cafe I have ever
Yeah.
seen.
Was that the inspiration for those giant statues you have outside of your place?
That's a good question.
I mean, it's not the inspiration for that. It more gave us confidence to collect the stuff we want to collect.
Yeah, so when the statues really happened post-pandemic and we were working on grants and all kinds of paperwork and stuff, and we really looked at how much money we had in our advertising budget that we were paying Facebook and Google, and it made us really sad. Instead of putting that money towards advertising online for a couple of months, we bought a dinosaur instead. And that made us happy. But actually, it worked pretty well because people love to take photos with her, the Puzzlesaurus, and post them online. So we get a lot of organic traffic that way.
For sure. I love it.
And just from the outside in, you have all the paintings on the outside wall. And then even when you get into the lobby, you have this giant video game. How did that come about? That is awesome.
The video game story is wild.
Yeah, so we had been collaborating with a local artist for some different projects in escape room design.
Yeah, so there's a video game in Game Night, and he had designed that. So his background was in web development, but he also liked to do screen printing and some woodworking.
And arcade cabinet.
And yeah, he's an arcade fan too. So we were talking to him when we were moving into this new space, and we're like, hey, Barry, we have all of this space. Do you want to put up some of your screen prints or do something cool? And he was like, let me think about that.
Yeah. First, we had approached him and be like, hey, we want to redesign sort of our branding. The branding was done at 4 a.m. the months before we opened, in between building our first escape room in 2015. And we really needed a refresh on that. And so we asked him for that. And then it was like, hey, do you want to try some lobby designs? And in one of his lobby designs, he just put, oh, neat furniture cabinet.
Yeah, he came back to us. I was expecting like, oh, here's some ideas for art, and here's like maybe some ideas we could go for the logo. He comes back with multiple options for a full lobby redesign, each of which had different logos that we could use, different branding packages, and different like wild
secret activations.
Active video games. And we're like, this is insane. I love this. Why did you do this? This is great. So we did that, and then he physically built the couch and the
shelving unit
that houses the video game. He coded it. He did all the design for it and did the upholstery too. He just made the whole thing himself. Anyway, we hired him, and he's our creative director now.
Yeah. So the secret quote unquote lobby game is a large shelf that's framed to look like Tetris pieces that has some various tchotchkes on it. And in the center of the shelf is a high score list.
It's a TV.
Yeah.
It's a TV that runs through different high score lists.
And it's themed to look like a retro 16-bit, 8-bit arcade system. We run a monthly leaderboard, more so people can show off funny team names than anything else and reward people who are really kicking butt. And in it and below it, there's a huge insert coin box. And sometimes it's out, sometimes you have to request it. But we have a 12-inch wide quarter that you put in a slot under the TV, and it activates a secret Tetris game where you play from the couch to the television using joysticks and buttons and other weird things.
It's a collaborative Tetris game too. So one person has to stand on each end of the couch, and one person is moving and one person is rotating, and it switches between who's doing what. And then there's different joysticks that are different colors that it has you go to. So it's pretty complicated. We thought about getting a cool video game for the space, like the X-Men 6-player one or something like that. But we didn't want something that people would want to keep playing instead of going to play the game they actually paid and showed up to play.
It would have been a nightmare for our schedule because somebody would have pumped like $3 in quarters in and wouldn't want them to go to waste. I think in retrospect, our game masters would have been driven crazy by the music loop on a commercial arcade cabinet.
Fair.
If there's 20 in a room, it's a cacophony that you can either be irritated by or blend it out. But if it's one, it is that 20-second loop on repeat forever.
Yeah. So having a
Yeah.
game that was interesting and fun, but got old after 5 minutes was the goal, and it's perfect.
Yeah, we could ramp the difficulty up perfectly. It is a very challenging game. I hope it doesn't dishearten too many people who come in, because I always get to make the joke, that game you're playing now is more challenging than the escape room.
Yeah, I wanted to play it, but we did play it, but there were between games, because we were playing multiple games. I was like, oh, let's try it again. Oh, wait, there's somebody taking pictures of their high score. Oh, hold on. They're taking their time. I want to play this game.
Yeah, it's really good to help fill the time if weird things happen, like a team before you comes in a little late and we give them a little extra time here and there.
Or something breaks and we have to run in with a drill and some gaff tape.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a great value add. I don't feel too bad when it mercilessly beats people or if they can't play it a bunch, because it is free.
Right. That's
but
fair.
Yeah, it has a hidden difficulty level that ramps up at the end of the game. We actually have custom made little statues in the cabinet, and the statues are secret joysticks.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
nice.
a Dracula and a Stormtrooper.
Yeah.
What?
Missed
man.
that. Curt, I don't want to make you jealous, but when we did Calling All Villains, our family got the #1 spot for the month. We were at it was the first day of the month, but we were the #1 for that month for probably the next 20 minutes till someone beat
That's
us.
the key. That's the key. Go on the first day of the month. That's funny. So all of your games are original. Kind of take us through your design process.
Sure. So looking the widest view back possible, we try and pick either a genre that we think will complement the other genres we have in the building, or other things you can see in the Midwest. We try and pick something that will appeal to someone new. We're trying to get as many new players as possible. And I think that's still working for us, especially in a smaller market. We really depend on having so many people visit us once and then come back to visit and back to visit.
Yeah, and our market's, not necessarily unique, but it's a little bit special in that it's a small city, but it's a college town, big college town. So we get 10,000 or more new students every year. So there's a constant turnover in who's living in the community. Grad students will be here for a few years and leave. Faculty will often pop in for a few years and then pop out. So it's a small city, but there's a lot of churn.
Yeah,
right.
And there's not a lot of tourists. We'll have a few busy tourist weeks and we'll have a few escape room tourists a month. But otherwise, if you're in town for another reason, or you live here now.
Or you're about an hour and a half from major areas.
Yes,
about 2 to 3 hours between.
Okay.
Yeah, Chicago is about 2.5 hours, depending on where in Chicago you're going. Indianapolis is 2 hours. St. Louis is 2.5, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're on the way to a lot of places, but it's not really a big tourist spot. So that's how we look at how we decide what games we want to do. The other thing we'll look at, is there a specific moment or interaction that really excites us that we've talked about, either something we haven't seen anywhere else, or if we were inspired by another game, but they didn't. If we come out of a game excited to the point where, oh man, that game would have been perfect if instead of X, Y, it was Z. That gets us excited to make that Z.
Yeah, structurally, we break things up into a 3-act structure, loosely divided into either moving into a new space or recontextualizing the space entirely. We try to keep the first act pretty short to get people interested in the story and then have some kind of twist. And then the second act is probably the bulk of the game. And then act 3 is the big surprise of something weird happening. And then usually that leads into a final kind of exciting game to finish. Yeah. Where even if you have a lot of time left, it feels like you don't have a lot of time left. So you're pushing through to try and do things quickly. If you played any of our games, you'll probably recognize what those things are for each of our games.
Yeah, the evolution of the idea of a boss fight, and whether it's a literal boss or just a figurative fun puzzle sequence that has everybody moving a little bit.
Yeah, we try to make sure everybody's involved in the major points where there are act changes. So we do a lot of things where people get into a new space and then they spread out, and then they're starting to gather all of the things together as they finish all of the kind of individual puzzles that pull together to do the final puzzle that'll open the next door, so that they're all watching that central moment at the same time. So everybody gets to experience it.
Yeah, we really try and design from a holistic process, where it's not puzzle first. It's not story first. It's not scenery first. It's a lot of stopping and starting. We'll pick what our game is. We'll pick the big moments. We'll pick broadly how we want the spaces developed, and then we'll start building.
Yeah, it's very iterative because there are just some things that you don't know if they're going to work or not until you have built the physical space and you are in the physical space. And that's one of the benefits we have over like traditional theater is that we can just build our set and be in it. Traditional theater, you have to plan everything ahead of time because you only have so much time when you're able to get on stage and actually build the thing. But for us, we can just build it and then see what it feels like and make changes based on that.
Yeah. Look at the suspicious corner and be like, man, people are going to want something over there. Like it looks visually engaging, and we could make it less engaging, but I would rather use that as an opportunity to split someone up and then give them a little moment where they have found something or discovered something that no one else has.
Those suspicious corners, I tell you.
If you don't embrace them, the players will, and then they'll either be disappointed there's nothing there, or they'll start pulling furniture or bricks off the wall or wainscoting out.
And the 3 rooms we've done, they're beautiful to even just walk and take the escape room and the puzzles out of it. Just a beautiful set design. So how did you all go about designing those? I mean, you're in the place. Like I walk in, I'm like, I'm in a spaceship here. This is definitely it.
It's a lot of that iteration when it comes to design.
Layers and layers.
We never will commit stuff to paper and commit to a walkthrough plan of we'll do this wall like this. We'll put up fake bricks over here. We'll add some wooden trim over here and put a desk in. But then once all that's done, it's basically like we're starting from scratch again through the space and see what it needs, and then give it a week or two, and then we start from scratch again and try and walk through it as if we were a new player looking at it with fresh eyes.
This is honestly Chris's superpower. He just will walk in a room and stare at a wall and then just be like, I need something here.
Suspicious corner there. Let's go.
Exactly.
And the key is put a positive spin on it. Otherwise, it just seems like you're criticizing everything constantly.
How long does it take you? What's the average time for you to put a game together?
Pandemic broke us for that because we started building Icarus pre-pandemic, and then it took us 3 years to do because we kept stopping and starting.
Sure.
Our very first games we built in 60 days, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
It was nuts. Those
Lost
were
Temple went up in 45.
Yeah.
Including the lobby.
That was in 2015, where it was very much like furniture from Goodwill. And
So I still like to say 2015, we opened, our first games had 3 to 4 rooms.
Yeah, multiple rooms,
They
video
had
content.
Interactive video with performers. We had our digital ghost of the professor in the original Lost Temple in 2015.
And
no
some
one
amount of
was
tech.
doing that then.
Yeah.
Like,
Everybody was using the TVs just as here's a timer and your clues. And we were like, no, we're going to put a dude out there.
Yeah.
Nice. Chris, you went to school for IP, or part of it was IP law, right?
I do have a law degree from Southern Illinois. I did have a focus a little bit in corporate law, IP law. I never practiced.
You did pass the bar, though.
I did pass the bar.
Oh, look at you.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah. Have you thought about an IP game?
So we knew some people who were big in the licensing world when we were doing indie film, that like they came from a licensing background. They really had a lot of experience with film licensing and stuff like that. And there are just so many strings. You mentioned the Evil Dead 2 game, and I know from what I've seen from what he's posted, Seth has had great success with it, and I know their Arkham Horror game.
Yeah, I know he's a really big proponent of IP in games.
But you're basically my thought has always been, I think you either spend forever contracting with perfecting a contract and never get anything from it, or you're so likely to get a contract that's basically handing your future to a board of companies and you don't know when they're going to pull it back.
We very much to have control on everything we do. And I think once you add another party to that, you're giving up a little bit of control. And if people want to do that, I totally respect that. I think that those rooms can be really cool. I think it just wouldn't work really well for our workflow. And I think it would make us so frustrated.
Yeah, just not knowing if, oh, when June 1st comes around, are they going to let us renew or not?
So then Anne will never be able to fulfill her fantasy to be Indiana Jones?
Our first game was set in the 1930s at a university where we're trying to find our
Okay.
missing professor. I think there's a
I
lot of
love it.
ways you can pull elements of the things that you love without making it a ripoff or even any. It was more probably Lovecraft inspired than Indiana Jones, but you're able to pull aspects of what you love from the things that you love, I think.
Because
Yeah.
Chris
and
has the whips. Chris has the whips
do.
right in his office there.
Oh, those are nice.
He teaches kids how to do that at his camp.
I keep saying it's Illinois Jones, just a little bit since I'm
That's
in
okay.
Indiana. And I used to live in Illinois. Now I'm in Indiana, so I'm like, I gotta get
Oddly
something.
enough.
I love Illinois Jones. That's great.
How long do y'all keep a game before you change it out and mix it up?
It really depends on how it books. And we have been fortunate enough that everything has stayed really popular.
Yeah, when we opened our new games in 2018, we thought, okay, we'll do 5 years, and then if the set's still okay, we'll do a repuzzle in another 5 years, and then it'll be maybe a 10-year lifespan. But then the pandemic happened again, and so what is 5 years when 3 of them are during a pandemic? So we haven't had to tear any of our old games down yet. We kept expanding into the space and getting more and more space. Now we're at the point where we pretty much have as much space as we can for 7 games, and we have 7 games, so we'll probably have to start thinking about tearing them down, but we haven't had to yet, and we've been really blessed for that.
Yeah, part of it was when we completely rebuilt from the ground up, basically, which from a business standpoint wasn't a great decision to close down 6 games that were booking all the time.
But from an artistic standpoint, it was great.
Yeah, we've done at this point 12 to 14 permanent builds. We've done 12 pretty intense mobile pop-ups and 5 or 6 less intense mobile pop-ups.
And the games are always changing too. If a prop breaks, we replace it with something, and sometimes that means we change the game slightly.
If game masters have great ideas,
Yeah.
or if players
nice.
keep wanting to do something that's not destructive and are sad when it doesn't happen.
Congratulations, that's a puzzle now.
Yeah, we'll figure out how to embrace that, because there's one level where we think we know what's best, but also if 9 out of 10 families come in and do the same thing, it's probably the right thing.
The game's not sacred. We want people to have a really good time, and we want people to feel like they're doing cool stuff. And so if we modify the game to make people have more fun, that's a win for everybody.
Well, you do a great presentation on your adaptive difficulty for Recon, and that's on YouTube, so we'll link to that because
I was definitely quoting myself from that too.
Yeah. You talked about your pop-ups. Do you do those for like conventions, right?
Yeah. So we've only done it at Gen Con, which is, we started going to Gen Con way back in 2009 for the film festival. Again, great spot for
Gen Con is the largest or one of the largest board game conventions in the country.
I think it's the largest in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, I think it's bounced around.
70,000 people anymore meet up in downtown Indianapolis at the convention center and all the hotels around. It's huge. The thing about Gen Con, besides the fact that it's kind of our home convention, it's the one we've been attending the longest, is it already has a system for people to purchase tickets to play games. That's how it works. You buy the badge, and the badge gets you into the convention and the show floor. And then there's different events that you can do. One of these is, of course, True Dungeon, which is an early, almost pseudo escape room that came out 10 years before escape rooms were happening. It's like a walkthrough dungeon with puzzles. So if you haven't heard of True Dungeon, look it up. It's absolutely bonkers that it was happening way before we were doing any of this stuff. But there's already a system in place for ticketing. So that's why we're able to build this ridiculous set that takes 2 giant U-Hauls worth of space, truck it over, set it up in a day, run it for 3.5 days, and then tear it down and bring it back, because we're able to sell tickets, and we pretty much sell out as soon as they go on sale.
We would sell out 3 months in advance.
Wow.
So we would know that the games would be fully booked. We would know we would have an amount of budget for it. And that would allow us to build some really cool pop-ups.
Yeah, the idea of going to a convention and then just hoping that people pay us in person for it would be absolutely terrifying, because there's no guarantee that you're going to recoup any costs based on that.
Our game night, which it sounds like you guys played, that was 90% hauled to a 3rd floor ballroom and set up for 3 days and run for 1,500 people.
Yeah,
Not
it
the
was over-
boss fight, was it?
Including the boss fight.
Everything.
Oh my goodness.
Everything but there's a
temple
big
door
temple facade.
From the forest to the dungeon, we didn't bring. We had that
Yeah.
added that later, but every other thing was brought.
Yeah, in fact, there was a
Wow.
little more game at Gen Con because we pipelined it there. So there would be 8 players in the first room and an actor devoted to the first room. And then at the end of the first room, it would go for, what did we do?
It was 12 minutes in, 3 minutes out. So we had a 3-minute reset period between each of the games.
And then,
And we would move them into a little space in between the two games. We moved them out of the game and then back into the game.
yeah,
And we had, so
Okay.
we had 8 people in each individual room. That's why you'll notice that game is pretty much the only one where you don't go backwards, or you almost never go backwards, because it was originally built as
I
a-
actually prefer games like that. I like to move forward and keep moving forward. And people have different viewpoints on that, but
So for us, actually, the reason most of our games move backward is because we wanted to maximize the space. And so we wanted
That
to
makes
make it
sense.
feel like you're running around a really, really large space by the end of the
Mhm.
game. So that's why we like people to send people back and forth. But yeah, I can
as
understand.
long as it's clued. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's clued. Yeah.
Yeah.
you
what's
have
the
to clue it really
average
well.
what's the average square footage of your games?
Oh, it's tricky to say. We basically have 3 different game sizes.
I just don't know the answer to this
Yeah,
question.
no,
I haven't measured in a
we
while.
haven't had to do the math for a while. So,
Swear.
Revenge of the
I'm
Cabin.
gonna say medium.
Okay.
No.
So we have 3 of our games are in what would be considered to be the normal like office section of this gigantic weird warehouse we're in. And of those 4 games over there, 3 of them are about the same size. Revenge of the Cabin, Rise of the Icarus, and Scrooge's Christmas Trap are all around 15 to 30 feet, divided into 2 areas, 20 to 40 feet in that area, which is not a gigantic space.
Right.
We actually, when we leased the building, we were going off of proposed floor plans that were a different square footage. They were 15% larger than what the building actually was, which was great for our rent, but really annoying for our builds when we realized the rooms were a little bit smaller than what we had
Yeah.
planned. So those are all in that area. Wizard's Curse is a bit smaller, but opens up in different weird ways that we're really proud of. And then we have this quote unquote experimental section of the building where we put our larger games.
And that's where Game Night and Calling All Villains are.
Yeah, Villains is
Gotcha.
ginormous.
Yeah, Villains is really big. What's the size of that whole space? 1,000
Villains
square feet
is
for the whole space.
about 30 by 30, 30 by 40.
Wow,
It's in
that is
range.
huge.
Yeah.
100.
And a little of that's including the GM space. But yeah, we basically have room for 3 areas that are about that size. So Game Night's
Yeah.
pretty close to the same size as Villains, and our Dracula game / the partnership with the U of I
That one's a little bigger. I think.
program
That's the
is a
biggest
little
space,
bigger, but
probably
not by much.
probably over 1,000.
Yeah.
You've talked about conventions, and we were I don't know if it was with you, Curt, or when I went
Yeah.
with my family, but we went and
We were
found
there.
out that you all were at a convention doing this mini golf escape room, and I have stalked you since.
We
Like,
cannot
I am
find much information.
your
Yeah, so-
website, everything.
Critical Putt was the event that we did for Gen Con last year, and we did it as basically a beta test for our new attraction that we're in the process of building right now, which is a mini golf bar.
Yeah. So the event that you've heard about is probably a little more escape room than what our final course is going to be. But we're really proud of what we did with Critical Putt, which was around a 90-minute game where it would be teams of
4.
4.
It was rapidly pipelined, so you had 5 minutes on each hole.
And
Okay.
each
Wow.
hole had an amount of using the ball and it's usually putting and an amount of a puzzle or a trick or weird exploration or story to it.
Give us
But
an
what we're-
example of one of the holes, though.
So in the very, very first hole, we had an amount of onboarding where we would try and get people, it's a new concept. It's so challenging to just describe something new, let alone teach
Right.
people how to be good at it and teach people how to be good at it in 5-minute chunks. So the first hole was a tavern, and the tavern keeper would tell you a little bit about, okay, now I'm finally giving you your ball, because if we gave you your ball early, you'd be playing with it instead of listening to what we're saying. And But before you leave, I need you to kill some rats in the basement. And then the first hole was a platform where there were 3 little rats, 2 of which were quote unquote normal, 1 of which was wearing a little crown, the Rat King. And if you putted into each of the rats, they would squeak and a little light would shine under a picture of them.
Yeah, it was almost
like an arcade game.
like an arcade game display where there were 3 light bulbs, and above each light bulb there was a picture of a rat.
Like a vintage test your strength machine. So if you bonked all 3 rats, a little barrel would slide to the left and that would reveal the hole, and you put in the hole. And
how cool.
For each hole, the game would remember what you do and how your team did. You would scan in with an amulet.
Everybody had an RFID amulet that they would scan in. So this was really what we were testing. So if you looked closer at the hole before you started putting, you could see that one of the rats had a note. And
you follow the note, a little string on his hand. You follow the string to a note that says the 2 rats are madly in love, but the Rat King won't let them get married. If instead of killing all the rats, you hit the Rat King 3 times, you could split the cheese. And so if players sat down and they just started putting, they'd win and it would still do something. They would progress to the hole. But if they looked around and were inquisitive, they could find this alternate path and the game would actually remember. And there were some puzzle stations that were more TV based with screens and puzzles you're supposed to solve in the area.
Well, there's quite a bit of tech.
And that was honestly, that was the thing we were testing the most, and it worked so well, and we're so excited because what we want to do with our new attraction is we want to tell a single narrative story through a mini golf course. So your choices that you make early affect what options you have later. And we needed to make sure that we could make it so that the holes would remember what you did and everything would be able to talk to each other.
And this is going to be a separate facility.
This is adjacent to the escape room. It's in the same building.
Okay.
Yeah. We're in the early stages of renovating the 16,000 square foot space.
This is our big summer and fall project, is to get this up and running.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's a huge project. It's bigger than anything we've done before because we can't just iterate on it. We have to do all 16,000 square feet at once.
Yeah.
What's the
give or take
projected date?
In an ideal world, we'd be open before Christmas time, but I can't imagine the stars will align to make that happen. So probably early next year.
We'll see if we can get some amount of the course open by Christmas, but I'm not holding my breath.
All right. So in about a year, Chris, are we going to go? We're going to.
Yeah, I'm only 3 hours from you now, so no problem. We'll be there.
A little bit more, but yeah, that sounds incredible. So we're going to go into what we call a speed rounds. And the way this is going to work is that each of you will answer. So you'll have your own answers for each of this. You get only 1 sentence to answer. So you can't go beyond that. Maybe we might allow 2 sentences, but try to keep it to 1 sentence. Chris will ask you the questions and he'll tell you who's going first.
Got it.
So Anne, we'll start with you on this one. And then Chris, you answered just kind of right after her. But Anne, what is the best thing about owning an escape room business?
I'm going to say freedom, the freedom to do the things that I enjoy doing on my own timetable.
I would say creation, like just the act of bringing something that no one else has made or done in this exact way anywhere in the world and putting it in front of people to see.
Good answer.
Yep. All right, Chris will go first this time. What's the worst thing about owning an escape room business?
The same thing about owning most businesses. It's like if you're an active owner, you are on the hook and on call for all the good stuff and the bad stuff.
I was going to say what he said. So I'll instead say when your job is fun, it's hard to separate yourself from that. All of our vacations are playing escape rooms and it's fun and I love it, but it just means I'm working all the time.
Right.
All right, next question. Anne, you'll start us off. What is one of your favorite escape rooms that you've played?
Hands down, Strange Bird Immersives, The Man from Beyond, Houston, Texas. It is the only escape room that has ever made me cry. If you haven't played it, go play it right now.
There.
I'm going to say we caught it right before the end of the run, Doors of Divergence, which I'm just counting as one gigantic escape room. We played the same 2 games twice, and they were radically different, and it was great.
All right. Chris, your first assignment. What would you say is the best skill to have as an escape room business owner?
I would say the best skill would be being a jack of all trades, which is a cop-out answer, but it really is. Being a generalist in everything, if you had to be, I think is a little bit of everything works for me.
Cool.
Mine's kind of a cop out too. Flexibility. Anytime you're working with the public and you're asking the public to engage in what you're doing, weird things are going to happen. People are unpredictable and they do weird things. So being able to adapt and be flexible and do things on the fly is totally clutch.
Cool.
All right. And what is one thing you wish you would have known before starting the business?
I wish I would have gotten a degree in accounting.
That's what accountants are for.
Yeah, they're expensive.
They are.
I wish we would have had the confidence to jump in harder earlier. We were very risk adverse with our early expansions.
Good one.
What is a piece of reference material or source of information you would recommend? So we're thinking like books or videos or Facebook groups or whatever, but recommend to someone that's just starting out in the business and wants to open their own.
I'm going to probably steal Anne's answer and say Repod and Recon, the whole Room Escape Artist network was invaluable when we were starting out. David and Lisa Spira.
That's a good answer. So obviously there's lots of great Facebook groups and Discords that you can be a part of. I think the best thing that you can really do is just go play a bunch of escape rooms. Go and, play the ones in your area. Go play the good ones regionally that you can get to. See what people are doing that's new and exciting, but also see what people are doing that works. Also, Puzzle Craft is a great book just to understand how puzzles should work.
I feel like Anne answered multiple questions there.
I'm sorry. It was one run-on sentence. So I said and between all of them.
Yeah.
All right, last one. And we'll start with you. What is one piece of advice you would give to those starting an escape room business?
Know why you're doing it. Know what you're trying to get out of it. If you're trying to make money, there are way better ways to make money. If you are excited about the art, find other artists who are doing cool stuff and figure out what you can add to the conversation. If you are excited about the puzzles, go crazy, man. Make those good puzzles. Love it.
Cool.
Just know why you're doing it.
Don't be too precious about your vision. There are things worth fighting for that you want to do for interesting reasons, but be confident about what those are, but don't be confident about everything. Like, no one's the best at everything going forward. Like, there's always someone better out there. Don't let it get you down, and don't let it hold you back.
It's fair.
Good.
So obviously the future of CU Adventures right now is the project you're working on, which is the golf, right?
Yeah, the future is mini golf.
Right.
The future might be mini golf. We'll tell you in a few years.
Anything else? Any other projects you have in mind?
No, not really.
We're trying really hard to not have any other projects so we can devote everything we have to the mini golf, but
Fair.
Yeah,
we'll probably fail at that.
We'll have a new permanent 7th escape room at CU Adventures again before the holiday season, I'm sure. We're hoping to do another play-at-home puzzle game for the holiday season. I don't know if that one's going to happen. It probably won't be a solver shirt. The solver shirts take way too much work. We were like sewing things secondhand onto them in the back and everything.
It's very labor intensive, which was great during the pandemic when we could pay people to do that stuff.
Thank you both so much. I know you need to run. Thank you. We could talk to you for another hour, but we really appreciate you spending some time with us and answering our questions.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Thanks so much for having us.
Best way to reach y'all is head to cuadventures.com.
Yep, you got it. You can also find us under that moniker on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. All right. This has been Curt and Chris. Thanks for joining us on another scrumptious episode of Mystery Soup. Until our next culinary concoction, may your clues be clear and your escapes be triumphant. Keep puzzling, my friends.
See ya.
Mystery Soup. Mystery Soup.